welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about my pregnancy story and how I had a stillbirth. I'm going to start off my story right before I had to go to the hospital, and it was February 24th. I was laying down on the couch after I made dinner and I felt the urge to have to use the bathroom. So I got up, I went to the bathroom. I was in there for about 5 minutes. I started to feel pain in my lower back and my lower stomach, kind of like a circular motion of pain where it was just back and forth, back and forth. And I was like, wow, I really stood up for too long. I need to, get up and just go get some rest. I'm not feeling so good. And then I got up and I saw a lot of blood, and I thought to myself, and I don't know why I thought this, but I thought to myself, wow, I just had a miscarriage and I need to go to the hospital. And at this time my husband just left for work because he was working the night shift, and I was living with my grandparents at the time. I went to them and I said, I'm bleeding, I have to be rushed to the hospital, something is wrong. And we got in the car, we were going to the hospital, and I got in contact with my husband. I told him what was happening and just told him to meet me at the hospital. And we got to the hospital and they told me to sit in a wheelchair and they were going to bring labor and delivery, and it was very fast. So I was up there, I met the nurses, there was 2 of them. So they came into the room and they of course asked me what was going on. I told them what was happening, and I had to change into a gown and pee in a cup. And at this time I was alone. For some reason the person who brought me upstairs didn't bring my grandparents. I didn't know why, but it was very scary because at this point I was all by myself. The nurses did leave the room. I didn't know what to expect, and I definitely didn't have in my head that I was going into labor. But prior to even getting to the hospital, I was having contractions, and in my mind I was keeping track every 3 to 5 minutes, but I was so much in denial that I just wasn't really thinking about labor. I was just like, oh, maybe it's just something else. And then the nurses got back in the room. I sat on the bed. They laid me down and strapped me to this metal piece that regulated the baby's heartbeat and my heartbeat, and kind of followed the baby around while he was moving in there. And this was really the moment I was waiting for, because I was scared. I wasn't gonna hear his heartbeat again. I always felt him. He was a very active baby. He loved moving, especially when I woke up in the morning. It was kind of like he was saying, "Good morning, Mom." So I was just super nervous at this time. The lady who brought me up the stairs did bring my grandparents, and they kept me company until my husband came, and they were looking for his heartbeat. And at first it took a couple minutes for them to find his heartbeat, and I was so nervous because you were hearing my pulsating on there, like my stomach, my heart rate, not his. And then they finally found his heartbeat, and I was so happy, I was so relieved, and I thought to myself, well, I can go home, I'm all good. You found his heartbeat, thank you so much for your help, and send me home and figure out what's going on. And that was not the case, obviously. It was way worse than I could have ever imagined. At the time, they were just kind of trying to get my my vitals. They were trying to, see how I was doing, trying to calm me down through my contractions because I was very tense. I was very scared, so every time I had a contraction, I was in so much pain that I would tense up a lot. And at the time that my husband came into the room, I was going through a contraction, so I wasn't really paying so much attention. I was just trying to ease through the pain and forget about what was happening. It was a couple minutes until anybody else visited us. Then a woman came in. I think it was another nurse who was saying that I needed to get an ultrasound so she could see what was happening inside. And I said, okay. She was doing the ultrasound, and I asked, what's going on? Is everything okay? And she said, I have to go talk to the midwife. I can't say anything. When the midwife comes back, she will tell you what's happening. And I just said okay. My husband said okay, and she left. And then it was probably about 15 minutes until the midwife came, and she sat at the end of the bed and she said, your cervix has opened completely and you are going into labor. You are dilated to a 10. So we are going to prepare you to give natural birth. And I thought to myself, what is happening? This is crazy. And then I thought, and this is not counting out my husband because he was there with me, but I thought about my mom and how much I needed her there at that time, and how much comfort and love, and even through my situation, I knew my mother, if she was there, it would make everything kind of go away, but not go away. It was just the feeling of having my mom there was what I needed. And I didn't know how I was gonna do everything and go into labor without my mom. And I was just really confused on why this was happening to me. So I cried a lot. My husband tried to keep it together while I was going through all of this. So we were transported to the area of where I get to deliver my baby, into the room where they set up everything for him and for me, and they're putting IVs in me. They were setting up his monitor, and throughout this time his heart rate kept falling away from the monitor, and I thought, I would get really scared and I would think, oh my gosh, is he gone? Is he gone? And it was just because he was moving so much that, I would try to find it as quick as possible, but it always came back, and he had a very strong heartbeat. It was always in the 140s to the 170s. And so we were trying as hard as we can to process everything through. And of course, my husband does have his own side of the story. He's never shared, just as I never shared, step by step of everything I went through in the hospital. Of course, my family and even him know the details of what happened, little bits and pieces. I never shared my story step by step besides today, to all of you who do watch this. And it does make me very nervous because I do want to be able to change or save a life, save a baby, save a mother from pain. So at this time, my parents and my sisters and all the rest of my family were notified of the situation. At the hospital, there wasn't any service, so it was so hard to use my phone. It was so hard for my husband to use his phone, and my nurse was so kind enough to give us a cell phone that belonged to the hospital, but it had service. I was able to call my mom through there. You know, she was able to try to help as much as she could and comfort me as much as she could, and told me to just relax, and was giving me a lot of hope of the baby surviving, and, you know, having just so much love for me and for my husband and for my baby. And my sister, of course, was trying so hard to talk to the hospital and the nurses and, you know, see what was happening, see why this is happening. My grandpa, he also did try to see if I could get a shot that could stop my pregnancy from happening, but of course the midwife said no, because she said I was already 10 centimeters dilated and there was no point in making that decision. And then I did ask the midwife if I was able to have a C-section to kind of get all of this over with and to help my baby survive, instead of having him just wait and wait until he came out. And, you know, she told me no as well, because it was major surgery and it was not necessary. I could just give natural birth. I saw her probably approximately 3 times, and I have seen no doctor at this time, and it's probably been about 7 hours into me being at the hospital. And then I get a visit from some male doctor who comes in and tells me, you know, about my situation, being the one going through this situation, saying how this much percentage of passing away and this much percentage of living. And I was kind of just quiet throughout this whole thing. I wasn't really listening to what he was saying. I kept going in and out, and I know that he did tell me if the baby looks like he is a healthy, strong baby and that his lungs are developed, he will save the baby or try to save the baby, but have to transport him to a different hospital because the hospital I was at did not take care of babies that small and didn't have the right equipment for it. And then he said if he doesn't look healthy, I will make the decision to basically not save him. And that hurt me, because then I was thinking, what kind of hospital, let alone doctors and nurses or a doctor, am I letting take care of me and my baby? What kind of, you know, people did they allow to be at this hospital that would even say I won't try my best to do everything that I can, knowing that I was their patient, to save my baby? And after he left, I never saw that man ever again. I was there for 3 days and I never saw him. He never visited me, and he didn't even help me give birth. He didn't do anything for me besides tell me you know, what he would do in his perspective. And then I had really great nurses who were so loving, were so kind, were so helpful, and were trying their best to make me feel better, you know, in any way possible. Were making a lot of jokes and trying to make me laugh, and, you know, were just so nice, and to somebody that they didn't even know, somebody that, you know, they'd never even met. And this isn't saying because it was their job. I could tell they truly were hurt by my situation, and it made the process a little bit more easier knowing that I had nurses that, you know, were so helpful. But I was also asked if I wanted to take this specific medicine, I don't know what it's called, to make the process go faster, so I can give birth faster. And at this point, it's been over 7 hours and I'm just extremely overwhelmed. I don't know what to say. I'm completely terrified of giving birth, and so I look to my husband and, you know, say, what should I do? And he, you know, kind of just like, I don't know, because he's just as scared as I am, and, you know, saying it's whatever you feel is right, and I don't know what I feel. So, you know, he just kind of made the decision and said, no, just wait it off. Let's just see, you know, what happens, and if an hour or two nothing happens, then we will take the medicine. At this point, it was time for me to get an epidural because I was in a lot of pain, and my contraction turned into a constant feeling of peeing, and I kept feeling like I had to pee, the urge to pee, and I would try to and it wouldn't happen. And, you know, they said it's just a contraction, baby's probably on the bladder, and, you know, just, it was just a contraction. And so they put a catheter in me to help me use the bathroom if it was that. And then I got the epidural, and the anesthesiologist was the one who did the epidural, and he was a very nice guy. He did take, though, about 3 times to have it inside, and I was really scared because I didn't know how it felt like. I knew that if I, you know, moved a certain way, something bad could happen. I was thinking, I can't be paralyzed. I'm already going through this process. This is, you know, just so much for me. But the nurse, of course, the one that was with me since the moment I stepped in the hospital, she was there, and she, you know, told me exactly what to do, told me to just hold on to her if I was feeling pain. From waist down, I was numb all the way on my right side, but only halfway on my left side. So I could move my left leg a little bit, and I was thinking I was moving my right leg because my mind was telling me I was, but I wasn't able to move my right leg whatsoever, not even the tiniest bit. So my husband's family was also informed of what was happening, and his mom at the time was in New York, and his dad was only about maybe a half hour to 40 minutes away from the hospital. The nurses kind of just left us alone, and everybody just left us alone for a couple minutes to kind of just take it easy and relax and just go through everything that was happening, you know, kind of just trying to be there for each other and just love each other as much as we could. And then the worst part of all of this happened. I was just laying in bed. My husband was just sitting there. You know, I could tell he was trying to process everything. He was just very quiet, and the monitor did the thing again where it would beep and his heartbeat would get lost and then always come back. But this time I just felt like a muscle released itself in my stomach. I felt it was like air instead of a baby in my stomach. And I knew, and I told my husband, you know, to get the nurse, and the student nurse came in and she was looking for it. She was trying to, you know, be all calm and say, oh, okay, I can't find the heartbeat, but don't worry, I'll go get your nurse. My nurse comes in and nothing, can't find it. Then they bring in one of the other nurses. She comes in, can't find it, and then they say it's okay, we'll bring the midwife in. And this was the last time I saw her. She brought in the ultrasound monitor and Doppler and was looking for his heartbeat, searching, and again, nothing. And she says, I am so sorry, but there's no heartbeat. And she left, and I cried, my husband cried, my grandma cried, and the nurse, she was the mother I was needing at that time. She was crying with me, and she apologized and, you know, said, you're so young, don't worry, this, you know, you'll get through this, please be strong. And she let us be for a long time. At this point, or at any point when this was happening to me, I never had a feeling of anger. I was never angry at anybody. I was never angry at, you know, the hospital, even though they didn't care so much. I was just extremely sad and hurt and in so much pain. And just thinking about it now does anger me, because I wanted to get the baby out as soon as possible before something like this happened, and they just denied me and would not let me have a C-section. So my husband's dad and stepmom came, and, you know, they were sad for what was happening, and they kind of, you know, took Chris away for a little bit to have breakfast and to just get away from everything that was happening at this time. And it was around 6 in the morning. My baby passed away at around 4 in the morning on February 25th. And they took him away for a little bit to, you know, distract him from this whole process. I was just really exhausted and I needed to go to sleep. So I just rested for a little, and then it was time for a shift change where I got new nurses and a new doctor. But I was never visited by a doctor after that male doctor, even when my baby passed away or anything like that. I was never visited by anybody that was a doctor besides that one guy who never even checked me or anything. And just so you know, my water never broke by itself through this process. The midwife, when she was checking me in my area, actually broke it for me and told me that my dilation went all the way down to a 3 when it was supposedly all the way to a 10. I did my research and I did see that there are some cases where if you have a swollen cervix or just down there is a swollen area, it can dilate from like an 8 to a 5 or 6, but being dilated all the way to a 10 and dramatically going all the way to a 3, it's just a lot of explaining, a lot of confusion, a lot. But it was new nurses, new doctors, and this doctor came in and it was a woman, and she came to me and was, checking my area once again and was trying to see how far it was, if it was time to push, and it was time to push. It was my husband, the 2 nurses, and the doctor, and I was pushing and she said stop, and I stopped pushing, and she told my husband, and I could see what she was saying, and she said his arm and shoulder are out first, not his head. Okay. How can you confuse his arm from his head? I don't know, but she told me she had to put him back and try to shift him to where his head was coming out first, and I was just like, okay. And when she was shifting him, and my stomach was shifting too, and it was the worst pain I've ever felt physically. I was in a lot of pain. I was crying and screaming, and I was very quiet this entire process. I never screamed, I never yelled. I just was trying to go through everything step by step, but she went so far to the point where I couldn't do it anymore. So much pain was happening physically and emotionally, and she said, I can't get him back to his position. I'm gonna go consult the other doctors and see what they suggest I should do. And I just ignored everything because I was crying, upset, and the nurses were trying to calm me down. My husband, was saying I was so strong and just trying to pull through with me. And a couple minutes go by and she comes back and she says, the doctors and I discussed that we don't have another option but to have a C-section. And wow, 23 hours of labor, 23 hours of pain, and not being visited or getting the right care through doctors. And when I wanted to get a C-section in the very beginning, they just fought me on not having it, and in the end, that's what I needed to get. I didn't say anything for a while. She explained to me, the baby, when he passed away, he kind of floated up. He didn't have any more muscle strength. It just kind of released. The way we can do this is having a C-section. And then she asked me if it was okay if she tried shifting him again while I was in surgery, to see if he would come out naturally. And at first I said no, because I didn't know what she was talking about. I didn't know that I was going to be asleep, so I immediately said no. And I told her I was in too much pain, I couldn't do it. And then she said, you would be asleep the entire time and you wouldn't feel any pain. And then that's when I said, the only way I will do that is if I'm sleeping. And she said, okay. And I gave her the approval to try. And then she also informed me and told me that if I was to have a C-section, she informed me this before she gave me the papers I had to sign. Sorry if you hear kids in the background, that's my sister's girls. But she informed me that if I was to get a C-section, because of the way the baby is placed, she has to cut me in a way where I will never be able to have natural birth again. And at this point, I didn't really process through what she said. I was so emotional that I just said, I want him out. Please just get him out and do whatever you can to just take him out of me. And so they prepared me for surgery. I took this sour tasting juice. I don't know what it was for, I forgot what they said, but I was really scared to take it because for those of you who know me, I am terrified of liquid medicine. I can take the biggest size pill, but I will not take liquid medicine. I don't have the stomach for it. It's been 23 hours. Just chugged it and was like, oh, that was actually really good. But kids, it's hard to make a video. So I was getting prepped for surgery and my husband was as well. They were putting on the mask, the hat, you know, the apron, and then he wasn't even allowed in the operating room because I would have been asleep. So he was waiting in our room the entire time that I was in there. I went to the operating room. I had to be transferred over to a different bed. That was very painful. And I just looked up at the light and I fell asleep and woke up like 2 seconds later, but it was actually like 3 or 4 hours later. And I woke up next to a desk and I knew when I woke up that I had a C-section because my stomach was in a lot of pain. And then I was like, you know, where's my husband? Where's my baby? And, you know, the nurse was trying to reassure me, I'll get your husband, you know, we'll give you your baby. We'll just wait till your husband's here. And my husband came and then they gave us our beautiful little baby. He was 1.8 pounds and 12.5 inches. He was tall for his age of when he was born because my husband is 6'2" and I'm 5'8", so we're both, you know, pretty tall. So he was, you know, he was very long but very skinny. He was just so much like my husband. He was beautiful. He had my husband's skin. He had my husband's nose. Of course, I never got to see what his eyes look like, but the doctor came and told me that she tried for about 10 minutes to shift him and bring him out naturally, but it wasn't work. Process, his arm broke, and that made me really upset. like I said, just very careless things happened throughout this whole process. And the nurse informed me that she did take a look at his arm and not to look because it would have traumatized me, because his arm didn't look like an arm anymore. So I never got to see the left side of him because I was just too scared. I didn't want to remember my baby like that. After we got to see him for a couple of minutes, they transferred us back to the delivery area in a different room where we could have visitors and they could see the baby. And the nurse that was taking care of me throughout these hours, day or two, she was so nice enough to make a memory box of him and take pictures of all of us. And she took pictures and she saved it for me and gave me all this beautiful things, and of course pamphlets and books to read for mothers who have had loss or stillbirths, or any loss that is of their baby or child. And we just spent about 10 hours with him and loved him, and had a lot of friends and family that came and saw him and saw us, and just were so supportive. And I just had so much love and so much people who cared for me. This process, losing a baby, is never easy, and I would never wish this upon anybody. But I can say being a mother is more than just the word. It's a beautiful thing. I will end my story here. So my whole point to this story is why I had a stillbirth. It's called incompetent cervix. That's what I was diagnosed with. And it's when between 14 to 16 or 11 to 16, between those, that your cervix starts opening gradually. And it was happening to me, and I didn't realize it was happening to me. With this kind of situation, you don't really get symptoms. I had symptoms, but the doctors were telling me it was regular pregnancy symptoms. I suggest to everyone who is trying to get pregnant or is pregnant to please get your cervix checked more than just once, because sometimes it's not just symptoms that will bring red flags. Sometimes it's just nothing, or it's just one thing that may seem like nothing. Get your cervix checked. Make sure if you feel that something's wrong, or just anything, just please go to your doctor. Don't be embarrassed. It's better to be wrong 1,000 times than to lose your baby. And I'm so grateful for this opportunity to be able to share my story. If you did like my story, I would love to share more. Please comment if you do have any other video ideas. Like and subscribe. I know this isn't the best video. This is my first video. Thank you so much for watching if you did watch all the way to the end, because I know it is long. I thank you for all the support, and I have so much love for all of you who've watched this, and just thank you so much. Bye.